Let's start. So my topic for today is PWA for games, an enhanced web gaming experience. So we're going to look what is PWA and how can it be integrated for web games. So yeah. Um, Before that is I would like to introduce myself. I'm Stephen Vinuya. I'm currently a software development team lead at GoPassport. A Microsoft MVP for Developers Technology, community lead for Angular Philippines. So we're also planning to have like a conference on our country, Philippines, and it's more about Angular because it's like my bread and butter when it comes to development, Angular. And I also work as a part-time game developer. So that's why I got into a little bit of game development because it's my part-time job. I'm a part-time game developer. And if you happen to interested with my talk, I have a website where I do post blogs there. It's onecompileman.com. So One Compileman is like a reference for an anime, One Punch Man. So I'm an anime fan, so that's why One Compile Man because I like um, doing codes before running it. So I do a lot of coding before I run the actual project. And yeah, so here's my email as well. Stephen.binuya@gmail.com. If you happen to be interested or you want to contact me afterwards, you can email me at that email. So yeah, so now um, why are you here? So what is the agenda that we have for this topic? So the agenda that we're going to tackle today is that we're going to talk about three major things. We're going to talk about what is PWA, a little bit of history about PWA, and since we're integrating PWA with game development, so we're going to talk about what is web game development, and a little bit history of HTML5 game history. And we're going to run some samples and demo, of course. I'm going to show some of the sample PWA games and also the steps on how you can create your own PWA games and also a demo. We will convert one of my games into PWA. And of course, we're going to have a Q&A if we have enough time. So yeah, that's basically our agenda for this talk. Next is let's start. So let's start to define what is PWA. I know most of you have already know what PWA is, but let's still define what is PWA for those who don't. So according to my most reliable source on the internet, which is Wikipedia, according to them, PWA or progressive web applications are web applications that load like regular web pages, still works as regular web pages or websites, but it offers functionality like working offline, push notification, and it can access the device hardware, which is traditionally available to the native applications like Android and iOS. So that being said, a progressive web application is a application that can work offline and has push notification. But later on, we're going to discuss what are the core features that makes a website PWA. So that aside, we're going to leave this definition for now, and we're going to expand it a little bit more as the slides go on. So next is how did PWA originated? So who invented or coined the term PWA? So in 2015, um, Alex Russell and Francis Berman coined the term PWA or Progressive Web Application to describe the applications taking advantage of the new features supported by modern browsers, which is the service workers and the web manifest. So later on, we're going to talk about what are service workers and what is the web manifest and how does two functionality or files looks like when you're actually coding it. And it lets the users upgrade the web app into progressive web application and can be installed in their native operating system. So when we say PWA, so when you say your application or your website is a PWA site, it should be composed of these features. Not all, but maybe some of it. Like it should be installable. So your website should be installed, whether it's on a phone or a desktop application. So later on, we're going to see how can you install your PWA app inside your desktop or your mobile application. Next, it should be responsive since you're developing a site that can be accessed through mobile and web applications. So it should be fully responsive. Connectivity independent, meaning that, as I said before, it should work offline. So it should be connectivity independent, meaning it can work with or without an internet connection once it's loaded. App like fresh, safe, discoverable and engageable. So later on, we're going to talk about why it should be safe, why it should be discoverable, so something like that. So, well, PWA is a website that should be reliable. Um, it should work offline and can load fast. It should be fast and engaging. So since we're installing the PWA app, it can be installed in your phone. Of course, it can be engaging because you can just click the application inside your desktop shortcut or home screen and automatically open, so it can be engaging in that part. So that being said, I think to clear some confusion about what PWA is, um, let's know, or how can you know if a website is a PWA website or not. So let's say, for example, Twitter. Twitter is one of the websites that is PWA, one of the big websites that are PWA. So to know, one of the main features of PWA is, so when you're accessing a Twitter website in your browser, you can see this plus icon besides the favorite favorite button of the website. So when you click that plus icon, it will prompt you to install the application. And if you choose install, you can see in your desktop or in your mobile phone, it should have an application created in your as a shortcut or as a application. So when you installed it, it should create a Twitter application in your desktop, or if you're using mobile phone, it should create an application in your home screen. Another thing, as I said before, PWA can integrate or can maximize the functionality of having a push notification. So you can see there, when you first load Twitter, it will ask you if you should allow Twitter to use or show notifications, and it can really be engaging for you because whether the browser is open or not, you can still see the notifications popping up on the right side of your window saying that someone to follow tweeted or your tweet, something like that. It can really be engaging because it can really notify you once there's notifications for you to see. Okay. And since I said before, Alex Russell is the one that coined the term PWA, an employee of Google. So of course, Google's browser, which is Chrome, has the ability to detect if a site is a PWA site or not. So to check if the site is PWA ready or not, you can just simply go to the developer's console, click the lighthouse, and make sure that the progressive web app category is checked. Then you can just simply click generate report. So after you click that one, it should show you something like this, um, which is it's trying to emulate the website in no internet connection. It's trying to emulate the website in a mobile view. So it should take a little time depending on your specification of your computer. So after that, it will show you something like this. It will show you scores for performance, accessibility, best practices, and SEO. So what we want is to check if our website passed the PWA checklist that Google is trying to establish. So let's click progress web. After we click that one, we can see this result. So these are the important checklists when you're trying to make a PWA site. But for me, I think this three is the most important one, which is it should be deployed. Your site should be deployed using SSL. So let's say, for example, you have completed your PWA app and you're still wondering why the install application isn't popping up or isn't working for your site. And it's because probably you're not deploying your site in an SSL or SSL using SSL. So it should be deployed using HTTPS, meaning it should have an SSL certificate on it. And of course, service worker are the ones that caches your caches your application and readies the code and make it installable offline. And manifest.json, we're going to look what manifest.json is. But for those out there who is an Android or Android developers, probably have heard of the manifest thing, which is the app manifest XML, I think, for Android. Correct me if I'm wrong. And of course, since you want your site to be installed in many devices like tablets, phone, you should have different app icons with multiple sizes to cater all of the applications that you want it to be installed or the devices that you want it to be installed. So yeah. So now that's basically what PWA is. It's more about if you're trying to develop PWA, you should like check the lighthouse, all the criteria that makes your site PWA or not. So yeah. So now let's move on to the game part. So since you're attending the talk about PWA for games, I assume that you like games, like you like developing games or you like playing games. I think before you like to develop games, you should like to play games. I think so. For me, I think you can also chat in what is your top three games. So later on Slack or in private, we can talk about what's your favorite game or not. So for me, my favorite games are Sekiro. So Sekiro, Dark Souls, Bloodborne, and Nier Automata. So I really am a good fan of hack and slash games. So I like those games. So yeah. So for web, so we have this Agar.io. Who among you here have heard of this game? I think it's one of the most famous games in web. So Agar.io, I think, has accumulated 5 million a day when it was released because of the advertisement, I guess, and also the number of players that playing Agar.io. And me as well used to play Agar.io when I was in college because I used it as a pastime whenever our professor isn't around the laboratory. So Agar that I was my game to go when I was in college. So yeah. So today is we're going to like look what is browser based games. So these four features are the what you call this um the essential part of having a browser based game. So if you don't have an internet connection, this little dinosaur in Chrome will pop up and you can pay for it for a while as long as you don't have internet connection. And also there's is Flash. So for those people that have played before in Y8, what are the sites? I think it's just Y8 for Flash that is famous back then. And of course, you can develop um, develop web applications or web games using Unity as well. And also the new standard or the most common thing is HTML5. Next is a little bit history on how BBG or browser-based games started. So it started back in 1990 and they're using DHTML or dynamic hypertext markup language. And the main purpose of having a browser-based game before is just to make a casino game because computers are not that powerful back then in 1990. So, and having a game to run in a website will take a little bit more resources because you're emulating a game inside the website. So, probably the most feasible games back before was making a casino game. The next is Flash. Now, 1998, Flash was introduced in web game development or browser-based game development. And Pulp is the company that is experimenting with Macromedia Flash. And unfortunately, Flash isn't supported or has already died just recently. It's because iPhone is one of the main reasons which why Flash is dead right now because iPhone didn't support Flash because it requires some extensive processing for the device itself. And on 2014, here comes the HTML5. You can now develop without having to code in Flash or Unity. So just JavaScript, HTML, and CSS will do. So it's because it delivers features like Canvas, WebGL, and WebAudio. So 2014, HTML5. And now, since what are the most common HTML5 game libraries out there? So there is Pacer. I have used Pacer as well. Construct, which is if you're more into drag and drop scenario with less code, you should use Construct for developing your HTML5 games. There is PJS, what do you call this? Play Canvas, Pixie.js, 3JS can also be used to develop games in 3D. There is Unity, and there is you can also use P5.js. So next is let's have a look on how 2D web games looks like for some of my 2D web games. So let's check. Uh-huh. So unfortunately, I cannot show some of my company games because I have signed some NDA. So yeah. So these are some of my games that I have created. This is a top-down shooter game. So you can just like destroy enemies by shooting at them, and they will just follow you wherever you go just to kill you. Yep. So later on, I will post all the links for my games, and and also the GitHub repository so you can check my bad code. Yep. And of course, let's see what do I have here. So I have also a sample tower defense. So we can just place towers here, and there's a particle system going on there. So this one is created using p5.js. So yep. So personally like P5 for developing 2D games because it has this vector library which is pretty easy to use when you're doing it in P5. And also let's show some games here. I also have like this one which is like a Flappy Bird clone. So it's just like Flappy Bird with B on it, not a, that one, and this one. So just like as the first one, Flappy Bird clone, which is different than the other one. I also have this one, which is Doodle Jump like clone game, wherein you have a bunny that jumps over a platform, and if you hit an enemy and if you fall down to the platform, it also it's game over. So next is that is one of the sample games that I have. But let's see my PWA games. So I'm just going to share it over my phone, so I should be able to open this one by zero for a while. Okay. Okay, let's view. So yep, it's waiting to load. So there we have it installed on it. PWA games, these are just websites that is installed like a native APK application. So first, let's start with this one. This one is a 3D game which I created. It's just like a copy of Catch Up, Ketchup Company. So basically, you just put a stack over a of blocks and try to make it as, as as tall as possible. So if ever you run out of blocks and it's game over. So this one is also a PWA game, but it looks and works like a native game or a native Android game, I would say. So let's see how can you install a PWA game. Uninstall one of my games. So it has a splash screen as well. Going to talk about how can you set up those things and how can you change the splash screen or not and some steps like that. So I'm going to uninstall this one and we can check how to like install a PWA games or how can a PWA game or a website should behave inside your browser. So just let us click here. Just to load the page. Mm-hmm. Hmm. Hi, okay. Sorry for a while. I think it's not opening anything incognito, so I'm just going to switch to my native browser. Okay. Okay, here we have it. So just try the connection. Okay. So yeah. So when you're trying to access a PWA website in your mobile phone, you can see something like this. So let's say, for example, I have this game Conejo Jump. So for you who didn't know what is Conejo is the Tagalog word for rabbit. So we just rabbit jump and make it Conejo Jump because it's like my native dialect or native language for rabbit, which is Conejo. So as you can see, there is this add Conejo jump to home screen. It's the one that's going to prompt you to install the game into your home screen. So it will prompt you something like this, add to home screen. So I should add it to home screen, and it should add it to home screen. Let's see. Mhm. Okay, there we have it. So yep, and you can also uninstall the PWA web application if you like it or not. So something like that. So that's what makes PWA game engaging in a way that you can install it in your mobile phone or devices in mobile devices. So now um, let's move into sample of web 3D games, and we're going to also see how 3D games should be converted to an PWA game. Okay, so not just 2D, but you can also convert 3D games into PWA1. So I also have some of not PWA 3D games. So this one, if you have played Near Automata, this game is inspired by Near Automata. So it's a top-down bullet hell shooter games. It's bit laggy because I'm sharing my screen at the same time playing the game. But you can access the website. It's called it can be accessed through One Compile Man, Bag Hunter. So you can play the game. It has 25 levels on it, so you can have a pretty decent time playing this one. So yep, so that's one of my games. And now let's look on to sample 3D games, which I have in PWA. Okay, let's see this one. Alien Runner. So it's a PWA game. It's loading assets for a while because it has 3D models in it. Let's wait while it loads the assets and also the sounds. Okay. So there we have it. So this one is a clone like Temple Run, but it's not that good as Temple Run because I'm bad at coding. So yeah, basically that's okay. Game over. Yeah, basically this is it. You can okay, so you just jump on the platform. The player runs infinitely, just an infinite runner, and you collect coins, the coins, and yeah, basically that's it. It's also a PWA game, but on 3D. Okay, so basically, you can recreate what a native Android application or Android game should look like, but it's not highly suggested to create a 3D game in PWA because of some hardware issue or something like that. So now, let's talk about why should you convert your web game into PWA. So one of the main reasons is after you have installed the game, it should be fast on the succeeding calls or once the page is loaded once. So it should be fast on the succeeding calls and it can be engaging as well, which I talked about the previous slide because you can install it on your phone or your desktop application. So something like that. and accessible. So part of being installed, it can be accessed quickly. So and also you can push notification in your game. So whenever you want users to like inform that you have a new features in my game, hey Stephen, I have a new feature in my game. You should come and check it and play it again, or something like that. So yeah, it will be accessible and engaging in a way. Next is what are the steps you should consider when you're creating a PWA game. So first is you should plan. So of course, whenever you do something, you should plan it thoroughly. So first, involved in planning, you should conceptualize what game you should make. Um, so conceptualizing the game, mechanics, and the gameplay. So identify all the game entities. So what are involved in the game? Does it have a player and an enemy or something like that? And tip for you to who wants to start a PWA game, always plan small. Okay, so don't plan like I'm going to make a Mobile Legends clone using browser or something like that. Always plan small. Always think of a way of it's fun and a little bit bigger as the first time or you make it a big game. Next is, of course, after planning, you should develop your game, code what you have planned in mind, and of course, during the development, if you see something worth adding and make the game fun, you should add it. And of course, when you're developing, you should develop controls easy for web and mobile. Okay, so sometimes controls in web should be different when you have the controls in mobile. So when you're in mobile, you should maximize the swipe or the gesture animation or gesture strokes, the touch animation, the touch stroke or something like that. But when you're in web, you should maximize the use of the keyboard since since it's easier to play the game in web when you're using the keyboard. Next is, of course, after you have developed the game, you should make it PWA. So we're going to set up the manifest.json. Later on, I'm going to show a site where you can easily set up your manifest.json, set up some service workers, and of course, you should compress your images, sounds using compression site. So let's say, for example, you have big PNG images. Of course, it will later show some bottleneck in your game because it taking up a little time to load. So make it compressed and as little as possible. So when um, when it's always easier to use libraries like Workbox and slash PWA. So yep. So what are the important things to consider when doing a PWA game? So one of the most important things to consider when you're doing a PWA game is you should consider responsiveness. So responsiveness, as you may think, is quite easy because for you, I think it will be easy. Today's web, we have more power in the CSS capability, CSS3. Yeah, you might be thinking, yeah, it should be easy making a game and make it responsive to all devices. But the thing here is, let's say for example you're developing a game and you're developing a game in a normal resolution which is 130 by 600 pixels. And you have this player sprite which has a 140 width and 140 in height. And you want to, like, when you develop that site, the height and the width for the switch to mobile, realize that up here, your sprite isn't shrinking at all when it comes to mobile. Because when you're dealing with canvas object or elements, it's not easy as CSS, like, which automatically shrinks the sizes of the character or sizes of the elements based on the browser's width and height. It's not simple as that. So one way to solve this problem when you're developing a PWA game and you want it to be responsive in all devices is um is to have a scale variable. Okay? So let's say, for example, you're developing your game and it looks good on a height which has 337 pixels. Okay? So it really looks good when you're developing it in your laptop, having a size, having a height of 937 pixels. So what we want to do is we will define the height that you're trying to develop your game, which looks good in that height. So let's say, for example, 937 is the height where you develop your game and it really looks good with that height, having a 140 pixels and 140 pixels in height and width of each elements of your game. So we're going to define, a scale, uh, which we will pass in every game entity that has a height and a width, and of course, it also have an x and a y and a velocity of the entity. So what we're going to do here is we're going to have the scale. So if your mobile phone is smaller than 937 resolution, so we're going to scale down the game resources that we have. So we're going to divide the current device height to the base height, and the result for that is we're going to multiply it in every code that you have with every code that you have, which correlates to height or anything to do with coordinates or pixels. So of course, after we get the scale variable based on the base height, the height that we're used to develop the game. So we're going to have the scale variable for that. And inside the player class, as you can see here, I have this dot size 200 times this dot scale, meaning that I'm going to scale the 200 pixels based on how is the scaling goes. So if it's bigger than 937, it should be a little bit bigger than 200. And if your device is a little bit smaller than 937 pixels, then it should be scaled down to whatever value it should derive into. So as you can see here, I have used the scale variable in every scenario. So I have used it in the size. I have used it also in the gravity. So my gravity variable should also scale down because the pixels that I have in the game is shrink down. So of course the gravity should scale down as well. The velocity should scale down as well, or scale up depending on how big the screen is, and stuff like that. So next is when you're developing a PWA game, of course it should work in any platform. But you should also keep in mind that you should also keep in mind that some games are meant to be played in landscape or in portrait view. So you should always or have it's a best practice to have this screen. So when they're accessing the site or the game in portrait mode, but your game only looks great when it's on landscape, then you should prompt them to flip your screen into portrait or whether landscape or portrait it is. So, yep, something like that. And yeah, if it's flipped to landscape, then it should show the game and the player can easily play the game afterwards. Um, Next is change the control per platform. Of course, when you're doing PWA site, you should have two controls ready. So one control is for desktop controls, which is you're trying to maximize the keyboard control. And next is you should also be ready since you cannot use keyboard in mobile phone. So you should be ready to also cater the controls for mobile as well. So for mobile, so for this game, which is the Conejo Jump, I'm using the left arrow keys, left and right arrow keys for the desktop view. And when I'm in mobile, since I told you before that PWA is maximizing the native device hardware capability, so we can use accelerometer for controlling the game in mobile. So something like that. And let's go for the little bit of demo. So let me close this slide first. So let's first go to a little bit demo. I'm not going to code the game from scratch, but I'm going to show to you why why the scale variable is important. So we're going to make a sample for this game. Let me show this game. So this game is the Conejo Jump. So for you who want to know what the tech stack for here is, I have used Angular 7, Howler, Pixie.js, and P5. So Pixie.js is the one that I'm using for the canvas rendering. And I'm using P5 just for the sake that it has a better vector, what you call this, it has a better vector library than Pixie, or rather Pixie.js doesn't have vector library than P5. So, and I also use assets from Kenny. So I think you already know who Kenny is when you're into game development. Kenny is one of the big names when it comes to free assets of the game. So I have used the assets from Kenny. Yep. So let's the code. So I have used Angular for this one. So for you Angular tips out there, it's very straightforward. We have this source folder, we have this app and assets folder. So when you're doing Angular, um, wait, I just magnify my screen. Magnify. Okay. Let's just make the screen bigger. So it's pretty simple when you're doing Angular and you want to convert your game or website into PWA. It's simple, just like ng add at Angular dash PWA. So Angular should take care of the things that is necessary to install for you to create the Angular PWA. But after you install your Angular PWA, let's cancel that because it's already installed. So you can see this two file, which is the manifest.json and the NSW, which is the service worker configuration. So let's talk about a little bit about the manifest.json. So I have found an easier site to generate this manifest.json so that it's a little bit intuitive rather than looking the JSON file. So let's open the site, manifest generator online. Let's search for that. Then let's click here. So you can just Google manifest generator online and it should have something like this. So in a manifest file, you can define the app name. Let's say, for example, Kuneho Jump, the short name, let's say Kuneho. Kuneho is the Tagalog word for rabbit for those who don't know. And display. So, display are categorized into four parts when you're developing a PWA app. Do you want it to be a full screen? So, full screen meaning it won't have an app bar, minimal UI, standalone, and a browser. So, of course, we're going to have a full screen since we want the experience to be the same as you're playing a normal Android application or iOS application. So description is where you put the description of your game. It's like a do the jump clone. The start URL, the path where your project should start, and let's see in the routing. In our case, we want the user to access the main route, which is the first route in our game, which is the home component. So it should be good having this start and backslash. So for the theme color, you can change what should be the theme color is. If you want your game to be like purple, you can change it to purple, something or green in the background color, or white, or anything you want. So next is, this is the one that I'm telling you, that if you're trying to make it installable to different devices which has different sizes, you should also prepare icons which is generated in multiple sizes so you can cater most of the sizes. So for in this case, it's pretty easy. You can just find, you just select a, uh, you just select an icon of your preference. So let's say, for example, images, articles is, so let's select this sad boy here. So let's just drag it into the choose file, then generate manifest. And you can see here it should generate a manifest zip. Then we should open the manifest zip, extract the files. So once you extract the files, you should see a manifest folder. You have all the sizes that you want, or if you want the game to be installed, and there you have the manifest trace. Things that we defined in the website are already here. You have the theme, the background color, the app name, the short name, the description, and yeah, there you have it. And also the display. So that's the purpose of the manifest JSON, for you to define how should your app look like when it's installed. So that's the purpose of manifest.json. So next is we have the service worker. So service worker in Angular, these are the ones that caches your code or your file. So since we're developing a game, we want to cache the PNG file, the WAV3, the MP3, and if you want to develop a 3D game, also you should cache the .obj file, the GLTF, something like that. So you want to cache the OBJ and GLTF since you want it to load faster if you're developing a 3D game. Well, in our case, we're just developing it in 2D, so we won't include that thing. And also this one, install mode. So we have two install mode, which is lazy. Um, sorry. We have lazy and pre-fetch. So what are the difference? Lazy or lazy loading is it will cache the file once you have already accessed a page, or once the assets have already been loaded or showed in the page, then it will cache it. But when you say pre-fetch, it will catch the assets before accessing the assets. So once you load the page, on the loading process, it's already caching the assets for you. So that one, and that's basically the two configuration when you're adding a PWA in Angular. Is quite easy when you're doing Angular. You can also do it natively without library, but I highly suggest you use like an Angular PWA or Workbox. So Workbox is also good when you want to convert your site into PWA. But since we're using Angular for this one, we're going to use, of course, the Angular library for PWA. So the service worker configuration and the manifest JSON are the most important things to consider when you're developing an Angular PWA application or game. So next is um let's tackle about the scale variable. Okay. So there I have this max width 620, meaning that the game looks good at 620 pixels. So um, we're going to scale our scale variable based on the max width that we have, which is it looks good on that resolution. So what if we just ignore this one and change it to 1? So let's see what will happen. Okay. So as you can see here, um, let's stop the play. So it got a little bit bigger in terms of layer and the sizes. So if I try to revert it back again to width divided by max width, and wait it to reload, you can see here that the player and the spacing of the tiles got a little bit wider and smaller for the player. And it's because the scale variable is the one that's going to do the work for that. It's going to scale down all the necessary things that needed to be scaled down in order for your game to look good at any devices. So if I'm going to convert it back to desktop view, and let's reload it again. So you can see here that still scaled good for desktop devices. So let me share the site for you to play for it with it. Let's see, this one. So if you want to play with the game, I can share it to you. And everyone, uh, if you found any bug, forgive me for that because I have a little time to make the game. So I just made it yesterday because I really have a tight schedule at work. So sorry for that. But that's basically the game. It works good on mobile and web application or desktop application. So and also I have told you that we should cater all the two scenarios, which is if you're in mobile, you should cater the better controls for mobile. When you're in web, you should cater the better controls for web. So in our case, I have used device motion as an event listener for detecting the accelerometer of the device, which is moves our player left or right. So it affects the player velocity. So the player should move left or right depending on the acceleration, gravity in the x-axis of your phone. And also, we want to cater what is best for web or desktop. So I have here for the arrow right and arrow left. So right and left arrows for controlling the what do you call this? For controlling this rabbit or something like that. So yeah, and I think that's it. Um, I will just share the code in the also the chat. So okay, sorry. This Yep, I have shared the code in the Slack and also in the chat. So if you want to look at my bad code or something like that, so you can check it. You can also have a full request if you have something to improve. So I think I can now go to Q&A. That's basically it for me. And yep.